In every generation, there comes a moment that silently divides people into two groups, not the rich and the poor, not the powerful and the weak, but the prepared and the exposed. And the danger is, most people never realize which side they're on until it's too late. History doesn't announce its turning points with alarms. It whispers first. Quiet shifts in numbers, subtle changes in confidence, invisible cracks forming beneath systems that look unbreakable on the surface. And then one day, without warning, everything collapses at once. Most people believe disaster arrives suddenly, overnight, like a storm appearing without clouds. But the truth is far more unsettling. Every financial collapse, every great wealth destruction, every economic reset was visible years before it happened, hiding in plain sight. The signs were ignored. The warnings were dismissed. The threat was laughed at. And when it finally arrived, it didn't just take money. It took homes, careers, identities, futures. Right now, as you listen to this, the world feels strangely confident. Markets are high. Social media is full of success stories. Everyone seems to be winning. Everyone seems to be investing. Everyone believes growth is permanent. But this exact feeling, this almost euphoric certainty, has appeared before every major crash in history. 1929, 2008. The pattern never changes. First comes optimism, then comes excess, then comes collapse. When people imagine a crash, they picture chaos, panic, poverty, the end of everything. But that emotional panic, that fear, that confusion, is not a side effect of the crash. It is the engine of it. It is the mechanism by which wealth is transferred from the many to the few. Because here is the truth nobody teaches you. Crashes don't destroy wealth, they move it. Every time the system resets, the same thing happens. The majority react emotionally. They sell in fear. They freeze in uncertainty. They make desperate decisions under pressure. And while they're panicking, someone else is watching, calm, patient, ready. And that small group quietly acquires what the masses are forced to abandon. This is how fortunes are made in silence. Right now, trillions of dollars are sitting inside inflated assets. Stock markets disconnected from economic reality. Real estate prices pushed beyond what wages can support. Entire industries surviving only because cheap money kept them alive. Debt levels so massive they can no longer be repaid, only rolled forward, again and again. And each time this happens, the system grows weaker, more fragile, more unstable. Yet most people feel safe. They feel safe because danger doesn't look like danger anymore. It looks like normal life. It looks like steady paychecks. It looks like rising screens. It looks like comfort. And that is exactly how every collapse begins, when the public feels most relaxed. The terrifying truth is this: by the time the average person realizes something is wrong, the damage is already locked in. Jobs vanish. Credit disappears. Markets fall faster than human emotion can process, and in that moment, panic takes over. People don't ask, what is the right move? They ask only, how do I survive today? And survival thinking is the most expensive thinking there is. Throughout history, the greatest wealth transfers were born from moments when most people were only focused on staying alive financially. The Great Depression erased millions of lives' savings, but it also built the foundations of the modern financial empire. The dot-com crash destroyed businesses, but it gave birth to the digital giants that now control the world. The 2008 meltdown wiped out families, but created trillion-dollar institutions for those who were positioned early. Every reset feels like the end, but it is always the beginning of a new hierarchy. And here is the part most people never understand. The system does not collapse when people are afraid. It collapses when people are confident, when optimism detaches from math, when risk is no longer respected, when debt is celebrated, when speculation is disguised as intelligence. That is when gravity returns, and it always returns. Right now, all the ingredients for a reset already exist. Persistent inflation, crippling national debts, central banks trapped between printing more money and destroying purchasing power. Asset bubbles across nearly every sector, Artificial intelligence disrupting jobs faster than education can adapt. Commercial real estate weakening. Consumer debt rising quietly beneath the surface. These aren't conspiracy theories. These are numbers. And numbers never lie. They only reveal themselves late to those who refuse to look early. Most people are not prepared for what comes next because preparation feels unnecessary right before it becomes essential. And this is why most people will lose everything. Not because they are stupid, not because they are lazy, but because they are reactive. They wait for permission from headlines. They wait for confirmation from crowds. They wait until fear becomes unavoidable. And by then, all the best opportunities are already gone. The real tragedy isn't the crash. The tragedy is that most people go into it blind, with no plan, no reserves, no emotional armor, no strategy. They enter the storm exposed, and storms don't negotiate. But here is the part that changes everything. Every collapse secretly creates a small window of opportunity so massive, so asymmetric, that it can redefine an entire bloodline's future in a single decade. Not through luck, not through gambling, but through preparation, discipline, and the courage to act when everyone else is frozen. The same fear that destroys the unprepared becomes the weapon of the prepared. The same panic that forces millions to sell becomes the doorway for a few to buy the future at a discount. And the reason you're listening to this right now is simple. You feel it. Even if you can't fully explain it, something feels off. Something feels stretched. Something feels fragile beneath the surface of normal life. That instinct is not fear, it's awareness. This story is not about predicting exact dates. It is about understanding cycles. Because history doesn't repeat by coincidence. It repeats by structure. Human behavior does not change. Greed is constant. Fear is constant. Confidence is constant. And so are the consequences. What comes next will not feel like opportunity. It will feel like danger. It will feel like uncertainty. It will feel like the world is falling apart. And that is exactly why most people will lose everything in it. But not everyone. Some will be ready. Some will be disciplined. Some will understand what the reset really is. And those people will not just survive it, they will win. The fall of every financial empire begins the same way. Not with fire, not with sirens, but with distortion. Reality bends slowly, so subtly that people mistake it for progress. Numbers rise, but value sinks. Wealth appears, but purchasing power disappears. Debt expands, but responsibility vanishes. And while the surface looks strong, the foundation quietly rots. This is how collapse is engineered in plain sight. At the center of every bubble lies the same illusion, that this time is different, that the old rules no longer apply, that risk has been defeated, that technology, policy, or innovation has finally broken the historical cycle. Every generation believes it is the exception, and every generation is proven wrong by the same outcome. In the late 1920s, everyone believed stock prices could only go up. In 1999, the internet was supposed to eliminate economic gravity. In 2006, real estate was guaranteed to rise forever. And before every collapse, the public was more confident than ever that collapse was impossible. Confidence is always highest right before the fall. The system doesn't collapse because people are scared. It collapses because people are reckless, because cheap money erases caution, because debt feels invisible, because leverage feels powerful instead of dangerous. When interest rates are low for too long, risk stops being priced correctly. Everything inflates at once. Stocks, property, startups, speculation, even lifestyles. People don't just invest more, they borrow more. And borrowed confidence is the most fragile confidence of all. Eventually, the math reasserts itself. Central banks tighten, liquidity dries up, loans become expensive, weak companies can't refinance, over-leveraged consumers crack, and suddenly what looked like wealth reveals itself as obligation. Payments replace profits. Forced selling begins quietly at first, then all at once. This is the moment when the crowd finally realizes something is wrong. But by then, the distribution has already taken place. The insiders de-risked earlier when optimism peaked. The institutions reduced exposure while media headlines stayed bullish. The smart capital rotated quietly into cash, defensive assets, and hard value. Meanwhile, the public was encouraged to keep buying, keep holding, keep believing, not out of malice, but because the system must maintain confidence to function until the very last moment. And when confidence finally shatters, the crash doesn't feel like a market event. It feels like a social event. Jobs vanish, credit tightens, banks fail quietly or loudly, growth freezes, and suddenly everyone is a seller at the same time. This is where the great misunderstanding lives. People believe crashes are random, but in reality they are mathematical inevitabilities. You cannot compound debt faster than growth forever. You cannot print unlimited currency without debasing it. You cannot inflate asset prices faster than income forever. The pressure builds invisibly until one variable snaps. And once it snaps, the chain reaction is unstoppable. But here is the deeper truth almost no one talks about. The crash is not the disease. It is the cure. It flushes excess. It destroys inefficiency. It eliminates weak businesses, weak balance sheets, weak ideas. It is brutal because it is necessary. Systems that never reset eventually decay beyond repair. The reset is the system protecting itself from total collapse. And every reset does one thing with ruthless precision. It transfers power. From the emotional to the disciplined. From the over-leveraged to the liquid. From the impatient to the patient. From the reactive to the strategic. During every collapse, the majority of people experience only loss. But a small minority experiences acceleration. This is not luck. This is position. Look at every great financial dynasty. Almost all of them were born during periods of chaos. Assets were acquired not at market prices, but at distressed prices. The same buildings, the same land, the same companies that were unaffordable in good times suddenly became available at fractions of their true value. This is why the wealthy don't fear crashes. They wait for them. While the public is focused on escape, the prepared are focused on deployment. Because in a downturn, cash is not trash. It is command. It is mobility. It is leverage without debt. It is the ability to move while others are frozen. When liquidity disappears from the system, the person who still has it becomes king. But liquidity without clarity is wasted power. This is where most would-be winners still lose. They understand that opportunity exists, but they don't know where to strike. They hesitate. They wait too long. Or worse, they gamble blindly into collapsing markets without a plan. And chaos punishes randomness. This is why preparation happens before panic. Before the storm arrives, the strategic investor builds what can be called a future shopping list. Not based on hype, not based on trends, but based on fundamentals, on long-term necessity, on assets that the future cannot function without. Because in a crash, prices fall first in junk and last in quality. But eventually everything falls, even the best. And when even quality breaks, that is when asymmetry appears. The crowd sees falling prices and smells danger. The strategist sees falling prices and measures probability. What matters most in this moment is not intelligence. It is emotional discipline. The human brain is not designed to buy in a collapsing environments. Every instinct screams retreat. Every emotion demands safety. Social pressure intensifies fear. News amplifies doom. Friends reinforce panic. This is why most people freeze, and freezing during a wealth transfer is the most expensive decision imaginable. The true winners operate from a completely different psychology. They do not try to catch bottoms. They do not seek perfect timing. They do not gamble on recovery dates. They scale into fear. When prices fall 20%, they begin observing. When prices fall 40%, they begin deploying. When prices fall 60%, they lean in aggressively, not emotionally, mathematically. They understand one brutal truth. If the asset survives, the return becomes exponential. This logic does not depend on speed. It depends on endurance. But none of this works without one final filter. Debt. Debt is the silent killer of opportunity. During rising markets, debt amplifies gains. During falling markets, it amplifies destruction. It converts paper losses into forced liquidation. It prevents patience. It removes choice. And in every crash, the most painful losses belong not to bad investors, but to over-leveraged ones. This is why the first act of offense in any coming collapse is actually defense, removing fragility from your life. Low debt, high liquidity, stable income, controlled expenses. This is not fear-based living. This is war positioning. Because when everything turns unstable, the most dangerous person in the room is not the one with the most assets. It is the one with the most freedom to act. Now look around the world. Consumer debt silently climbing, credit card defaults rising, commercial real estate quietly breaking, startups dying without headlines, governments drowning in promises they can no longer fund. These are not crashes yet. These are tremors. History always whispers before it screams, and most people ignore whispers. They ignored them in 2000. They ignored them in 2007. They ignored them in every cycle before that, and they are ignoring them again now. Because warning signs don't feel dangerous until they become unavoidable, and by then choice collapses. This section of the story is not about fear, it's about mechanics. It's about understanding how the machine actually works beneath the emotion. Because once you see the structure, the future becomes less terrifying and more strategic. The crowd will see the coming reset as destruction. The prepared will recognize it as clearance. And the difference between those two interpretations is the difference between losing everything and quietly winning the future. Every great reset ends the same way. Not with equality, not with fairness, not with mercy, but with separation. The system does not punish everyone equally. It exposes everyone differently. Some walk away lighter, some walk away broken, and a very small few walk away transformed. This is the final stage of the cycle, not the crash itself, but what comes after. When the dust settles, when the panic fades, when the headlines move on to the next distraction, something strange always happens. The world looks familiar, but it is not the same world anymore. Ownership has shifted, power has shifted, influence has shifted, and the people who failed to act during the storm suddenly realize they no longer control their future. They rent it. This is the moment most people feel the true cost of delay. They didn't lose everything in one dramatic collapse. They lost it quietly, through diluted savings, through lost buying power, through jobs that never came back, through houses they could never again afford, through opportunities that only appear once per generation. This is how most people lose everything, not in a single day, but over a few irreversible years. And yet at the exact same time, another group will be living a completely different reality. They will be buying while others recover. They will be building while others repair. They will be expanding while others survive. This is the hidden truth of resets. Recovery is not equal. Those who enter the reset strong exit it dominant. Those who enter it weak exit it dependent. And the tragedy is this. Almost everyone underestimates how permanent that separation becomes. Because once assets consolidate into fewer hands, they rarely return to the crowd. Once land is acquired at discounted prices, it stays owned for decades. Once companies are bought at crisis valuations, their future compounding becomes generational. This is how families rise. This is how families fall. Not through talent alone, but through timing and positioning. The coming years will not just test financial systems, they will test identity. Because when the illusion of stability is stripped away, people are forced to confront who they really are without it. Some collapse psychologically before they collapse financially. Others adapt faster than they ever thought possible. And this is where the final truth emerges. The reset does not reward intelligence. It rewards discipline. It does not reward confidence. It rewards preparation. It does not reward prediction. It rewards positioning. Most people spend their lives trying to predict the future. The rare few spend their lives preparing for multiple futures at once. And when reality chooses one, they are already standing in the right place. This is the strategic mindset that turns chaos into leverage. Because survival alone is not the goal. The real objective is control. Control over time. Control over choices. Control over movement. Control over opportunity. And control only belongs to those who are not forced. Forced selling creates poverty. Forced waiting creates regret. Forced panic creates permanent loss. But those who enter a reset with liquidity, clarity, low debt, and emotional armor move freely inside the wreckage. While others negotiate with fear, they negotiate with probability. This is not cold-blooded. This is how systems work. Nature itself eliminates weakness under stress. Markets do the same. The difference is that human beings are given advance warning, and most still ignore it. Now the question becomes unavoidable. What kind of person are you becoming right now, before the storm fully arrives? Are you building reserves or increasing lifestyle? Are you reducing fragility or adding leverage? Are you seeking clarity or seeking comfort? Are you training patience or training impulse? Because whatever habits you are strengthening now will be magnified under pressure. Crises do not create character. They reveal it. The people who will dominate the post-reset world are already behaving differently today. They are quieter, more selective, less impressed by hype, less emotionally reactive. They slow down while others speed up. They accumulate while others display. They prioritize resilience over appearance. And because of that, when the system convulses, they will not be shocked. They will be activated. The terrifying beauty of this moment in history is that we are standing at the edge of a massive convergence. Debt, demographics, technology, geopolitics, energy, currency, and human behavior are all colliding at once. This doesn't happen often. When it does, it reshapes decades in a few short years. This is not just another downturn. This is a structural shift. And structural shifts do not recycle the old champions. They create new ones. That is why this is not a time for spectators. It is a time for builders. But building begins long before construction. It begins in the invisible decisions nobody applauds. The boring choices, the delayed gratification, the cash kept instead of spent, the debt refused instead of normalized, the research done while others scroll. This is why most people will lose everything, because most people train for stability in a world that only guarantees volatility. But you do not have to be most people. You can train for pressure, you can train for darkness, you can train for uncertainty, and when it arrives, you will not break inside it. You will move through it. The final secret of every great wealth transfer is this. By the time the crowd recognizes opportunity, the opportunity is already expensive again. Recovery headlines always arrive after the buying window has quietly closed. The biggest moves are made in silence, when the news is still unbearable and the future still looks impossible. That is when foundations are laid, not for quick profits, but for decades of control. So when fear becomes contagious, when panic becomes fashionable, when selling becomes respectable, when waiting becomes unbearable, that is when the winners begin executing, not loudly, not emotionally, not impulsively, systematically, with patience, with data, with discipline, because they already decided long before the storm who they would be inside it. And when everything is finally over, when the system stabilizes again, when markets normalize, when media declares recovery, only then will the world realize something irreversible has happened. Ownership has changed hands. Power has shifted. The future has been quietly purchased by those who prepared while others waited. So the real question is no longer about the economy. It is about you. Will you react when fear arrives? Or will you execute when it matters? Will you protect illusion? Or will you position for reality? Will you follow the crowd into comfort? Or step alone into discipline? Because in the end, history is not written by those who panic. It is written by those who remain calm inside the fire. And the coming reset is the fire.